I stared at the presentation screen, my pulse racing as Tasia confidently advanced to the next slide. There it was, my quarterly market analysis displayed for the full executive team to review, but with angry red circles emphasizing supposed mistakes in my calculations. As you can clearly observe, Tasia announced, her voice laced with professional concern. These projections diverge significantly from standard forecasting models. She pointed to a side-by-side comparison where my data visualizations appeared wildly inconsistent with textbook examples. The boardroom felt stifling as 12 pairs of senior executives leaned forward in their seats. I stayed perfectly still, my face carefully neutral despite the knife twisting in my chest. 3 months of painstaking work were being systematically torn apart before my eyes. The volatility patterns shown here, she continued, indicating my custom-designed charts, completely misrepresent actual market conditions. When measured against traditional indicators, you can see the glaring inconsistencies. Director Paxton removed his glasses, massaging the bridge of his nose. "And you're confident in this assessment?" "Absolutely," Tasia replied without hesitation. "I've recalculated the numbers myself using industry-standard methodologies. The discrepancies are significant and frankly alarming." I watched in silence as she moved to the next slide. A complex visualization I had created after weeks of research and late nights. Most concerning is this risk assessment model. She explained it employs an unconventional mathematical method that produces projections entirely out of line with peer-reviewed financial forecasting standards. The CEO folded his arms, frowning deeply. I could practically see my promotion slipping away with every approving nod around the table. When applied retroactively to last year's market, Tasia elaborated, revealing a new comparison slide, this model would have completely overlooked the February correction. Our clients would have been entirely unprepared, potentially losing millions. Director Paxton shook his head slowly. "This is extremely concerning. I've already started implementing standard methodologies," Tasia assured him with practiced confidence. "With immediate action, we can still deliver accurate projections to the Wellington Group next week." The message couldn't have been clearer. She should lead the Wellington account, our largest client. The promotion we had both been vying for would be hers. "And you're certain these analytical methods are fundamentally flawed?" the CEO asked her directly. "Without question," she replied. "They violate core principles of financial forecasting." After enduring 60 grueling minutes of watching my professional credibility being methodically dismantled, Director Paxton finally turned to me. "Do you have anything to say in response?" Every gaze in the room shifted toward me. Throughout the entire presentation, I hadn't made a single sound. My heart raced as I weighed my next words. "Just one question," I said evenly, locking eyes with Tasia. "Can you explain why the client specifically requested this exact visualization approach in their initial brief?" Can you explain why the client? If you're invested in this story already, take a quick second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happens next when this boardroom showdown takes an unexpected turn. My name is Arya, and until that moment, I'd spent 4 years building a reputation as a brilliant but quiet analyst at Keystone Investments. I wasn't the type to dominate meetings or promote myself aggressively. Instead, I let my work speak for itself. Innovative approaches to data that consistently delivered superior results for our clients. I grew up as the middle child in a household where speaking up meant being interrupted. So, I learned early to observe, analyze, and wait for the perfect moment to make my point. This patience had served me well in my career, allowing me to see patterns others missed while my louder colleagues rushed to judgment. When I joined Keystone after completing my master's degree, I was determined to succeed on merit alone. For years, I'd watched my mother, a talented programmer, get passed over for promotions because she wasn't assertive enough in a male-dominated tech company. I promised myself I wouldn't let that happen to me. At Keystone, I slowly built my reputation by taking on challenging accounts others avoided and turning them into successes. My analytical approach wasn't conventional. I developed my own models that spotted market trends weeks before standard indicators. My clients appreciated the edge this gave them, even if some of my colleagues questioned my methods. Tasia joined the company 2 years after me. From day one, she was everything I wasn't. Outspoken, politically savvy, and determined to climb the corporate ladder at any cost. Where I spent evenings perfecting analyses, she spent them networking with executives at industry events. Where I focused on client results, she focused on visibility. We were opposites in every way. Yet, strangely, we developed an uneasy friendship over shared lunches and late nights at the office. I admired her confidence, and she seemed impressed by my technical abilities. When she asked about my methods, I'd share my thinking, believing we were supporting each other as women in a competitive field. Then came the Wellington account. The largest asset management firm in the region had selected Keystone to handle their quarterly forecasting, a prestigious assignment worth millions in fees. Director Paxton announced that whoever led this account successfully would be promoted to senior analyst with a substantial salary increase and team leadership responsibilities. I wanted that promotion desperately, not just for the money, though that would finally let me pay off my student loans. It represented validation, proof that quiet competence could triumph over self-promotion. When Paxton assigned both Tasia and me to the initial client meeting, I knew we were being evaluated head-to-head. Wellington's representatives were unlike typical clients. Their head of research, Dr. Nari, spent an hour discussing cutting-edge forecasting methodologies. He explained that traditional models had failed to predict several recent market shifts that cost them dearly. "We're looking for fresh approaches," Dr. Nari had said. "Our internal research suggests nonlinear volatility patterns contain predictive signals that conventional models miss entirely." I felt a thrill of recognition. This was exactly what my personal research had focused on for years. When I shared some preliminary thoughts, Dr. Nari leaned forward with genuine interest. Tasia, meanwhile, looked increasingly uncomfortable as the "can you explain why the client specifically requested this particular visualization approach in their initial brief?" If you're already invested in this story, take a quick moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. You'll want to see what happens next when this boardroom showdown takes an unexpected twist. My name is Arya, and up until that moment, I had spent 4 years building a reputation as a brilliant but quiet analyst at Keystone Investments, never dominating meetings or aggressively promoting myself, letting my work, innovative data approaches that consistently delivered superior results, speak for itself. Growing up as the middle child in a household where speaking up meant being interrupted, I learned to observe, analyze, and wait for the perfect moment to make my point, a patience that served me well in my career, allowing me to spot patterns others missed while louder colleagues rushed to judgment. After completing my master's degree, I joined Keystone determined to succeed on merit alone, having watched my mother, a talented programmer, get passed over in a male-dominated tech company, and I promised myself I wouldn't let that happen to me. Slowly, I built my reputation by taking on challenging accounts others avoided, developing unconventional models that identified market trends weeks ahead of standard indicators, earning my clients' appreciation even if colleagues questioned my methods. Tasia joined 2 years later, outspoken, politically savvy, and determined to climb the corporate ladder, while I focused on analyses and client results. Strangely, we developed an uneasy friendship, admiring each other's strengths until the Wellington account arrived, a prestigious assignment worth millions, promising promotion to senior analyst for whoever led it successfully. Assigned to the client meeting together, we faced Wellington's head of research, Dr. Nari, who emphasized that traditional models had failed to predict costly market shifts and that nonlinear volatility patterns contained predictive signals conventional methods missed. My research aligned perfectly, and when I shared preliminary insights, Dr. Nari leaned forward, interested, while Tasia grew increasingly uncomfortable as the discussion strayed from standard theory. After the meeting, Paxton pulled me aside, setting the stage for the confrontation that would define our careers. The conversation had ventured beyond standard financial theory. After the meeting, Paxton pulled me aside. Wellington was impressed with your ideas. They want you to lead the analysis phase. Tatsia's smile tightened at the news, but she congratulated me warmly. I'll handle client communications while you focus on the numbers, she offered. We'll make a great team. For 3 months, I poured everything into developing custom visualization tools capable of capturing the patterns Wellington wanted tracked. I tested my models against historical data, refining them until they accurately predicted 84% of significant market movements from the previous year, far exceeding the 61% accuracy of traditional methods. When Tasia asked about my progress, I shared everything openly. She seemed fascinated, probing with detailed questions about my methodology. I explained each innovation proudly, believing she was bridging communications with the client while I focused on the technical work. What I didn't know was that she had stopped sharing my updates with Wellington weeks earlier. Instead, she met privately with Director Paxton, raising concerns about my unconventional approach, carefully building a case that I was straying dangerously from accepted financial practices. The presentation ambush had been her masterstroke, casting her as the responsible professional saving the company from my reckless methods. And it had worked perfectly, until my single question changed everything. The boardroom fell silent after I asked Tatsia to explain why Wellington had specifically requested my visualization approach. Her confident expression faltered briefly. "I'm not aware of any such request," she replied, recovering quickly. The client expected industry-standard analysis. I reached into my bag and slid a bound document across the table toward the CEO. This is Wellington's initial project brief. Page 17 outlines their requirements for nonlinear volatility tracking, exactly the methodology I implemented and that you just spent an hour criticizing. The CEO scanned the pages with growing interest. Wellington's quantitative team has been researching these patterns for 2 years, I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. What looks like analytical errors to someone using traditional models are actually pattern recognition innovations they specifically requested. Director Paxton reached for the document. "Is this accurate?" he asked. "Wellington's chief strategist can confirm everything," I replied. "I've attended weekly strategy meetings with their team throughout this project. I assumed leadership was aware of their specialized requirements." Tasia opened her mouth, but the CEO raised a hand, silencing her. Her usually composed face betrayed the first flickers of panic. "You just spent an hour explaining how you fixed analytical methods Wellington specifically commissioned," I said, locking eyes with her. "I'm curious. Have you informed them you replaced their proprietary approach with standard models they explicitly rejected?" Tension gripped the room. Director Paxton flipped through the brief, his expression darkening with every page. "There must be some misunderstanding," Tatsia attempted, her voice slightly higher than usual. "These methods are untested. No serious investment firm would—" "Page 12. I interrupted calmly, pointing to the document. "It shows Wellington's back-testing results comparing traditional models with their experimental approach. Standard forecasting caught 61% of significant market movements. Their method identified 84% and provided earlier warning signals." The CEO looked up sharply. "Is this accurate?" I said. "Dr. Nari can verify everything. I've documented all discussions about their methodology requirements." Director Paxton closed the brief, unreadable. I think we need to pause here and verify some information. Tazia, Arya, thank you both. The executive team will discuss this privately. As we filed out, Tasia gripped my arm, dragging me into an empty conference room. Her carefully constructed poise was gone. "What are you playing at?" she hissed. "You made me look like a fool." I gently removed her hand. "I simply clarified the client's actual requirements," I said. "We both know Wellington would never approve those bizarre models. You're just trying to save face." I studied her, realizing how deeply she had deceived everyone. Dr. Nari personally requested that approach. You were in the initial meeting when he explained why. "That's not how I remember it," she said, smoothing her expression back to professional concern. "And it won't be how Director Paxton remembers it either. We've discussed your creative interpretations extensively." A chill ran through me as I realized just how thoroughly she had worked to undermine me. For weeks, she had been laying the groundwork, positioning herself as the voice of reason while painting me as dangerously unorthodox. "You should prepare yourself," she added with false sympathy. "Even if they don't fire you outright, your reputation here is finished. No one trusts an analyst who can't follow basic financial principles." She left me standing alone, her confident stride suggesting she still believed victory was inevitable, and perhaps she was right. In a straight battle between her political connections and my technical work, history suggested I would lose. That evening, I sat on my apartment balcony, watching the city lights flicker on as twilight deepened. My phone buzzed with a message from Director Paxton. "Meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m., with Wellington representatives present." No further explanation. I barely slept, replaying every interaction with Tatsia over the past months. How many times had she probed my methodology only to weaponize that information against me? How many private meetings had she held with leadership while I worked late, perfecting analyses? The betrayal cut deeper because I had genuinely believed we were supporting each other. The next morning, I arrived early to find the conference room already filling with executives. Director Paxton nodded tersely as I entered. Tatsia arrived moments later, impeccably dressed and seemingly untroubled, taking a seat across from me while avoiding eye contact. At precisely 9, Dr. Nari from Wellington entered with 2 colleagues, and the atmosphere immediately tensed. "Thank you all for convening on short notice," Director Paxton began. "We have a situation that requires immediate clarification regarding the Wellington Quarterly Forecasting Project." Dr. Nari has agreed to provide his perspective. Dr. Nari placed his tablet on the table, expression serious. "I was disturbed to receive standard market projections yesterday from Miss Tazia, particularly after the promising custom analytics Miss Arya had been developing for us." Tazia's head snapped up. "I believe the alternative approach needed revision to meet industry standards," she said. "Industry standards are precisely what we hired Keystone to move beyond," Dr. Nari interrupted. "As I made explicitly clear in our initial brief and subsequent communications, traditional forecasting models have consistently failed to identify the market anomalies most critical to our investment strategy." Director Paxton leaned forward. "Dr. Nari, to be absolutely clear, you specifically requested the nonlinear volatility modeling approach that Arya implemented." "Not only requested it, we insisted on it as a condition for awarding Keystone this contract," he confirmed. "Miss Arya's methodology aligns perfectly with our research directives." When Ms. Tazia sent standard projections yesterday claiming they represented Keystone's official analysis, I was concerned there had been a serious miscommunication. The room fell silent. Tazia's face had gone completely pale. "There seems to have been a significant internal communication failure," the CEO said carefully. "Rest assured, Wellington will receive the custom analytics you commissioned, delivered by Arya, who developed them." After the meeting dispersed, Director Paxton asked me to remain behind. Tatsia attempted to stay, but he dismissed her curtly. We'll speak later. Once alone, he sighed heavily. This situation is unprecedented, Arya. Had Wellington gone with the standard analysis Tasia proposed, we would have lost our largest client. I nodded, saying nothing. I owe you an apology. I should have verified the client requirements directly instead of relying on secondhand information. He paused, studying me. Why didn't you speak up sooner about Tasia's interference? I didn't know she was interfering, I admitted. I thought we were collaborating. She had access to all my work while claiming to handle client communications. He grimaced. A carefully orchestrated deception. What happens now? I asked. The senior analyst position will be yours effective immediately, he said. As for Tatsia, HR will be discussing her future at Keystone. It should have felt like victory. The promotion was mine, my methods vindicated, my chief rival exposed. Yet, as I returned to my desk, I felt hollow. The trust I had placed in a colleague, someone I considered a friend, had been weaponized against me. Throughout the day, colleagues stopped by with congratulations tinged with curiosity. The story had spread quickly through office channels. Tasia remained conspicuously absent, having left the building immediately after the meeting. At 5 hours, as I was preparing to leave, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You got lucky today. I stared at the message, a knot forming in my stomach. The tension I'd carried all day crystallized into something sharper. This wasn't just professional rivalry, it was personal now. The following days brought an uneasy transition. I moved into my new office and began building my team for the Wellington account. Tasia hadn't been fired, merely reassigned to internal analytics with minimal client contact. Each time we passed in the hallways, her eyes followed me with undisguised resentment. 2 weeks after my promotion, strange things began happening. Small at first, files disappearing from my desktop, meeting invitations vanishing from my calendar. Then more serious. A crucial email to Wellington contained calculation errors I knew I hadn't made, and a presentation deck was altered overnight with slides rearranged and key data points changed. I began staying later, triple-checking everything, before sending it, keeping backup copies of all files on my personal drive. The constant vigilance was exhausting but necessary. You look terrible, my colleague Jin remarked over coffee. Everything okay with the new position? I hesitated, then admitted. Someone is sabotaging my work. Small things, but enough to undermine me if I don't catch them. Jin raised an eyebrow. Tatsia. I can't prove it, I said. But who else would have both the motivation and the technical knowledge? Be careful, Jin warned. She's still close with Director Paxton's assistant and has been having lunch with several board members recently. A chill ran through me. While I had been focused on delivering results, Tasia had been networking, spinning narratives, laying groundwork again. That afternoon, I discovered my access to certain data systems had been mysteriously revoked. IT claimed leadership had authorized the change. Resolving it took hours, forcing me to miss a deadline for Dr. Nari. When I finally delivered the analysis late that evening, he was understanding but concerned. Is everything all right at Keystone? This is the second delay this week. Just some internal system issues, I assured him, unwilling to air company problems to a client. I see, he replied, not entirely convinced. Just so you're aware, we've received an interesting proposal from another firm claiming they can implement our methodology more efficiently. Normally, I wouldn't mention it, but given these recent hiccups, my blood ran cold. Another firm? May I ask which one? Criterion Analytics, he said. Apparently, they'd just hired a specialist in nonlinear volatility modeling who was familiar with our approach. I maintained my professional composure through the call, but inside, panic bloomed. Criterion was our main competitor, and this specialist could only be one person. That night, I searched online and found it immediately, a press release announcing Tazia's hiring at Criterion Analytics as their new director of strategic forecasting, a position several levels above what she'd held at Keystone. How had she managed this? Then it hit me. She hadn't just been studying my methods to sabotage me internally. She'd been learning them to sell herself as an expert to our competitor, positioning herself to steal Wellington's account. The next morning, I requested an urgent meeting with Director Paxton and our legal team. I laid out my suspicions, showing evidence of the systematic interference with my work and the Criterion announcement. "This is troubling," the legal director acknowledged, "but difficult to prove as deliberate sabotage rather than system glitches. As for her new position, unless we can show she's sharing proprietary information, she's merely marketing herself as an expert in the exact methodology you developed for Wellington. Methodology she publicly criticized as incorrect. Just weeks ago," I insisted. Director Paxton looked unconvinced. "People change their professional opinions all the time." I realized with sinking certainty that I was losing this battle. Without irrefutable proof, it would be my word against Tazia's, and she had always been better at office politics. That evening, I received an invitation to an industry conference where Tazia would give a keynote presentation titled Innovations in Nonlinear Volatility Forecasting. My methodology presented as her expertise. I sat motionless at my desk, fury and helplessness washing over me in alternating waves. Everything I'd worked for was being systematically dismantled by someone willing to cross lines I never would. In the battle between quiet competence and ruthless ambition, the latter was winning. But as I stared at the conference invitation, something shifted inside me. I had played by the rules while Tazia broke them repeatedly. I had trusted the system to recognize merit while she manipulated perceptions. I had been honest while she lied without hesitation. Perhaps it was time to change tactics. I opened my laptop and began typing, a plan forming that would require me to operate strategically, politically, and without mercy, just as she had. For once, I would fight not just with better data, but with better strategy. The industry conference was 3 weeks away, giving me limited time to prepare. Examining the event details, I discovered Tazia would be presenting to senior executives from major investment firms, including Wellington. Her session promised to reveal groundbreaking approaches to market volatility forecasting that sounded eerily familiar. The audacity was breathtaking. She hadn't just stolen my methods, she was positioning herself to poach our largest client by presenting my work as her own innovation. If she succeeded, my career at Keystone would be effectively over, regardless of my title. I needed to act, but confronting her directly would only lead to denials and counterclaims. Taking my concerns to leadership again would likely be dismissed as professional jealousy. I needed irrefutable evidence of what she was doing, and I needed to present it in a way that couldn't be ignored. The next morning, I called Dr. Nari at Wellington, keeping my tone casual as I inquired about the conference. "Yes, we're sending several team members," he confirmed. "The session on volatility forecasting caught our attention. Have you seen the preview materials?" "I have," I replied carefully. "I'm interested in how their approach compares to what we've developed for Wellington." "As are we," he said. "Innovation is valuable, but consistency is essential for our strategy. We need partners whose methodologies align with our research direction." The message was clear. Wellington was actively considering alternatives to Keystone, and the ground beneath my feet was more unstable than I'd feared. That afternoon, I contacted Jin, who had connections throughout the industry. "I need to know exactly what Tazia is planning to present at the conference," I explained. "Any chance your contact at Criterion could help?" Jin hesitated. "That's sensitive information, Arya. What are you planning?" "Just professional due diligence," I assured her. "If a competitor is presenting similar methodologies to what we've developed, we need to understand how they're positioning it." 2 days later, Jin forwarded me a draft of Tazia's presentation deck. My hands shook as I scrolled through slides containing my exact visualizations, recolored with Criterion's branding. The mathematical formulas I had spent years developing were presented with minor cosmetic changes. Even my original testing results appeared, the numbers slightly altered but unmistakably mine. Worse, the presentation included client testimonials from firms that had never used her methods, fabricated success stories to bolster her claims. I immediately backed up the files to multiple secure locations. This was the evidence I needed, but using it effectively required strategy. If I simply accused Tasia of theft, she would claim the methodologies were basic industry knowledge, or that she had developed them independently. I needed a trap that would force her to reveal her deception herself. For the next week, I worked on 2 tracks simultaneously. By day, delivering exceptional results for Wellington to ensure they had no reason to switch providers. By night, meticulously developing my counter-strategy against Tasia. The conference was at the Meridian Hotel, a venue I knew well from prior events. I contacted the event coordinator, Rian. I'm presenting in a different session, but I have technical concerns about the projection system. Could I test my presentation in the main hall beforehand? Rian agreed to give me access the evening before the conference. Just let security know you're here for setup testing. They'll let you in. Next, I reached out to several influential colleagues attending Tasia's session, mentioning without full detail that I had heard the presentation would cover methodology similar to what we'd implemented for Wellington. Really? That's interesting timing, remarked Anton, a respected quantitative analyst. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts afterward on how it compares. Actually, I suggested, I think the comparison would be more valuable if you went in with some background. Could we meet briefly before her session? I can show you the key elements we've implemented. One by one, I arranged similar conversations with other knowledgeable attendees, not enough to seem orchestrated, but enough to ensure critical eyes would be watching Tasia's presentation. 2 days before the conference, I received a message from Dr. Nari that sent a surge of panic through me. Looking forward to seeing comprehensive applications of your volatility methodology at the conference. If successful, this could significantly influence our provider decisions moving forward. He hadn't specified whether he meant my methodology as presented by Keystone or Tasia's at Criterion. The stakes had just risen dramatically. Wellington wasn't just curious about alternatives, they were watching closely. They were actively evaluating whether to switch providers. The evening before the conference, I arrived at the Meridian Hotel with a small backpack containing my laptop. Security checked my credentials and directed me to the main presentation hall, where Rian waited. You have about an hour before the technical team needs to run final checks, she informed me. Perfect. Thank you, I replied, setting up my equipment at the presentation console. While Rian busied herself with other preparations, I connected my laptop and accessed the system settings. What I did next wasn't technically illegal, but it certainly existed in an ethical gray area. I created a hidden presentation file that would remain dormant in the system, accessible only through a specific command sequence. The next morning, I arrived early and stationed myself in the hotel lobby, observing attendees without being immediately noticed. When Tasia entered, she looked confident, impeccably dressed, greeting industry leaders with practiced charm. She showed no sign of concern that I might be present. 30 minutes before her session, I met with Anton and several other analysts as planned, giving them a brief overview of the methodology I'd developed for Wellington. The key innovation is how it handles nonlinear relationships between seemingly unrelated market indicators, I explained, showing simplified versions of my models. Traditional approaches miss these connections entirely. When we entered the presentation hall, it was already filling with attendees. I chose a seat near the back, partially obscured by a column. Dr. Nari and his Wellington team were seated prominently in the second row, confirming this was more than an academic exercise. It was an audition. Tazia took the stage precisely on time, her opening remarks smooth and engaging. Today, I'll be sharing a revolutionary approach to volatility, forecasting that challenges conventional market assumptions. She began. This methodology represents months of intensive research and testing. As she progressed through her presentation, I could see recognition dawning on Anton's face, and those of the other analysts I'd briefed. The similarities to what I had shown them were impossible to miss. Meanwhile, Dr. Nari took detailed notes, his expression inscrutable. Tasia advanced to a slide showing impressive backtesting results. My results, with numbers slightly adjusted. When applied to last year's market conditions, this model successfully predicted 82% of significant volatility events, compared to just 60% using standard methods. From my seat, I quietly opened my tablet and entered the command sequence I'd programmed the previous evening. On stage, Tasia continued confidently, unaware of what was about to happen. The proprietary algorithms driving these predictions analyze correlations that traditional models ignore entirely, she stated, clicking to advance to her next slide. Instead of the expected chart, the screen suddenly displayed a split image. On the left, Tasia's slide. On the right, my original Wellington presentation with identical formulas created 3 months earlier. Above both images appeared the text original development timeline. Tasia froze momentarily, then quickly clicked to advance past the unexpected slide, but the next slide showed the same split-screen comparison with different content. She clicked again and again, but each slide now displayed her version alongside mine with timestamps clearly visible. Murmurs spread through the audience. Dr. Nari leaned forward, eyes narrowed. Tasia attempted to regain control. There seems to be a technical issue. If we could have IT assistance? I don't think it's a technical issue, Anton called out from his seat. These appear to be comparative slides showing the original development dates of the methodology you're presenting. I don't think it's a technical issue we're presenting. That's absurd, Tasia responded, her voice tight. This is proprietary criterion analysis. Then why does it match exactly what Keystone presented to Wellington 3 months ago? Dr. Nari asked, standing now. Down to the formula notation and visualization color schemes, the room had gone completely silent. There must be some mistake, Tasia insisted, desperately trying to exit the presentation, but each click only advanced to another comparison slide. Then came the final slide I'd prepared, showing Tatsia's email to me from months earlier, where she had asked detailed questions about my methodology, time-stamped weeks before she criticized it as fundamentally flawed in the boardroom. I stood up slowly, finally allowing myself to be seen. There's no technical glitch, Tatsia. Just documented evidence of how you studied my work, publicly criticized it, then attempted to present it as your own innovation after joining a competitor. The room erupted in whispers as I walked calmly to the front of the hall. Tasia's face had gone completely white. You planted these slides, she accused, her voice barely audible. You hacked the system. The slides simply show factual information, time-stamped development materials from both companies, I replied. If the methodology is truly your original work, you should be able to explain the identical mathematical notation, testing parameters, and even the same typo on slide 17. Dr. Nari and the Wellington team had gathered at the side of the stage, expressions grave, while other attendees photographed the comparison slides. This session is clearly compromised, Dr. Nari announced. I suggest we adjourn while this situation is addressed. Miss Arya, the Wellington team would appreciate a private conversation at your convenience. As the room emptied, Tasia remained frozen on stage, her carefully constructed professional facade shattered. When only a few people remained, she approached me, voice trembling with fury. You planned this ambush. You deliberately humiliated me. I regarded her calmly. I simply presented factual evidence of what you did. The methodology you criticized as dangerously flawed in front of our entire leadership team. The same methodology you then studied in detail, stole, and attempted to sell as your own innovation. You'll regret this, she whispered. Perhaps, I acknowledged. But right now, industry leaders have just witnessed you presenting stolen intellectual property. That seems a greater professional concern than any personal vendetta between us. An hour later, in a private meeting room, Dr. Nari confirmed that Wellington would be expanding their relationship with Keystone, and, with me specifically. Integrity matters as much as innovation in our partnerships, he explained. Today made clear which provider embodies both. 3 days later, Criterion Analytics issued a press release announcing Tazia's departure by mutual agreement. No financial firm would risk hiring her after video clips of the presentation debacle circulated throughout the industry. I didn't feel the savage triumph I'd expected. Instead, I felt quiet satisfaction that truth had prevailed where office politics had failed. I hadn't destroyed Tazia. She had destroyed herself through her own actions. I had simply ensured those actions became visible at precisely the right moment to precisely the right audience. The following week, Director Paxton called me into his office. The board has approved a new position, Chief Methodology Officer. They'd like you to take it, with a substantial compensation increase. I smiled. I'd be honored. And Arya, he added. That was impressive work at the conference. Unorthodox, but effective. Sometimes, I replied, the most powerful response to deception isn't confrontation. It's simply ensuring the truth is visible to everyone who needs to see it.